we have with us Professor Dr. Srinivasan K. Iyer. And Professor Srinivasan Iyer is a research person in Samkhya and Patanjali Yoga. He is an eminent scholar in philosophy, and he is also a good orator. I don't want to speak much of him because he is a very popular person in philosophy family. And Dr. Srinivasan sir is a regular participant in philosophy family. He has contributed a lot of speeches on different occasions of philosophy family. And he has also contributed many articles national and international level. We are benefited by his talk, and his philosophical reflection on different fundamental issues of philosophy are very reflective and thought provoking, and his contribution to philosophy family is a lot. So today he has uh, he has uh, um, he has his today his presence has enlightened us, and today he will speak on the topic the bondage in Sankhya philosophy, and Sankhya is a very popular subject for him, and today his speech will definitely benefit us. And today I extend my regard, and I, I bow down my head before him for his presence.
Okay, thank you. Pranams to all, and thank you very much for the philosophy family. And Dr. Kailash Chandra Moharana has paid a rich tribute, encomiums to me, which I think I don't deserve that much. However, whatever I learned is learned only from here, the philosophy family, because I happen to listen to so many intellectuals, professors, great scholars, and budding youngsters. And I think I have given 6 or 7 speeches relating to the philosophy family. Well, I don't keep a track record of all those things, but my main focus was based only on Samkhya philosophy. Samkhya philosophy has 23 chapters, believe it or not, right from the the biography of Kapil Maharishi to his disciples and his sutras, and through the evolution theory, the end product called the liberation or the dualism. So that is quite an interesting subject that I just wanted to deal all those chapters one by one. I think I have spoken about the Sankhya philosophy in detail, Sankhya Darshana, followed by the teleology in Sankhya philosophy, and the evolution theory I have touched upon, but I have not dealt in detail about all the 24 tattvas or principles. And now I'm going to, briefly describe about the bondage in Sankhya Karika. You'll be wondering that I am just a little bit drifting from Sankhya philosophy to Sankhya Karika, because Kapil Maharishi had 20 or 25 or 26 disciples. Some of the best were Varsaganya and Sri Iswara Krishna. And Iswara Krishna happened to be the 26th disciple of Sri Kapil Maharishi. That was some centuries earlier he was living, and then he followed it. Some of the sutras were deliberately burnt in those times because they believed that this is an atheist policy, philosophy, and that is why we could not get the complete detail about the Sankhya philosophy. But somehow or other, there are around some 240 sutras still available with the Banaras Hindu University, and other leading libraries across the length and breadth of the country. And it's really wonderful that Sri Iswara Krishna, one of the rebellions of Samkhya philosophy, I would say, because he became a rationalist in the sense that he did not discuss about the presence of the unmanifest. I don't call it as Parabrahman because he never uses the word. He used the word only unmanifest. It is just against the Advaita philosophy of Sri Adi Shankara, wherein he was emphasizing only about monism, which is Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo, Brahmaivanapra. There is nothing but one God. And is all God played by Maya. And he said Brahman and Atma are one and the same. But as far as this Sankhya philosophy is concerned, they were dealing with the dualism policy, that is the Purusha and Prakriti. The unmanifest is infinite. It is beyond boundary of time and space. It has no attributes, but it has the quality to monitor, to contemplate, and observe everything in this universe. But he doesn't take any action. That is the beauty part of it. There is a debate going on there when he is conscious, is capable of doing everything. Then why the unmanifest or the Parabrahman is not taking action in solving the problems of humanity? It is a big thing to be discussed, and it is not such an easy subject. And you will have to read the Advaita philosophy in toto, written by so many, authors, and beautiful commentaries are available, but pretty difficult to listen until one who devotes his time and energy to read, mostly in Sanskrit. That would be much better because it's a very difficult proposition, and if it is translated to English, that will be given different kinds of meanings. So I think it is quite a bit difficult task to understand the Advaita philosophy. So Sankhya philosophy is much more easier because of the dualistic principles. So Iswara Krishna has, being a rationalist, has written about 72 verses. These 72 verses are, I would say that they are nothing but words. And if you start reading that right from the beginning to the end, I bet you will not put down your book. Such a beautiful, explanation and the clarity he has given in his Karikas. Of course, there are so many, commentaries now available. I have referred mainly a beautiful book written by a Japanese philosopher, a great Buddhist, a Sanskrit scholar, and a Sankhya philosopher too. He is at 96, living hale and hearty in Japan. Especially, he has worked in Tokyo University and also some women university there. I was trying to contact Sri Sangaku Kumeda, but I could not get his email ID because as per the principle, the Japanese, they never divulge the email ID of individual persons unless and until I get the permission from the concerned person. So it was all the more difficult, so I could not get it. I just dropped it. But I've been trying through various sources. I'm not able to get it. He has 20 beautiful scholars who have written this book called The Way to Liberation. It contains many subjects. including the Sankhya philosophy, the teleology, and the bondage, and also the evolution theory, and so many other chapters are available, written by so many eminent Buddhists of Japan. I wonder how I was able to land upon this book. I searched through the net. I could not get it in Amazon, Flipkart, or any other Exotica or something like that. And finally, I got dropped into Manohar Book Publishers in Delhi, who was able to give me that book. So I read it. But to cross even 3 or 4 chapters, it takes a lot of time. A lot of explanations were given. A lot of arguments are there. And they have referred mainly the Yuktidipika, which is for the Sankhya Karika, against the Buddhists who were arguing about the Sankhya Karika's presentation, the line of their attack on the unmanifest, and so many, other matters. It was very interesting. So I completed 3 chapters. The 4th chapter was the bondage in Sankhya Karika. This is a small sketch about how I just read that bondage in Sankhya Karika. It's really interesting. See, Ishvara Krishna discussed about the bondage succinctly in 7 verses relating to bondage, which is attachment, which is bandha. We call it as samsara bandha. Why this bandha? He has not answered this question because no intellectuals, professors who have read this Ishvara Krishna's interpretation of the bondage, the attachment between the Purusha and Prakriti, he left it untouched because, it produces a lot of deliberations, arguments, counter-arguments. When dualistic policy is based on the liberation of what? We have been all these days telling about the Purusha to be liberated. Unfortunately or fortunately, he has put forward so many reasons and logics that it is not the Purusha that is to be liberated from the attachment of Prakriti. It is in fact Prakriti is to be liberated from Purusha. I will tell you how and why about these 7 slokas which are written relating to bondage in Sankhya philosophy, especially in verse number 20, 21, 44 and 45, 51, 62 and 63. This is only a synopsis that I'm just giving now. Later on, after completing this synopsis, I will just getting into the business of explaining all these verses one by one, so that there will be a clear clarity on these karikas, whether what Krishna is writing or as explained is right, and what we have to do later on. So he has verily proved beyond doubt that Prakriti is at last bounded with Purusha. It is something really astonishing, because in Sankhya philosophy, they say the liberation has to happen, then one should have the knowledge. If you have the knowledge, then you will get liberated. That's what he has been mentioning in all the, sutras which were available. But being a rationalist, Ishvara Krishna says on the contrary. He says it is not the Purusha to be liberated, it is the Prakriti to be liberated. Because Prakriti by itself is a nartaki, it's a feminine character and a dance use. So we all know that the fat gender always attracts the male gender. This is what has actually happened, and she has been suffering into a lot of problems by attaching with the Prakriti, and the Prakriti makes a promise that the purpose of your attachment is to understand the humanity as well as the part played by Maya, the Bandha, and how to get liberated from Prakriti. This is what has been argued in all these 7 stanzas. It's really wonderful, I tell you, to read all those things. On its own, Purusha is a non-doer. Purusha is neither produce nor productive, but it has consciousness. You know, he is a non-doer. Purusha can contemplate, but he cannot take any action. It is very finite. It is attributed by time and space. And the best part of it is Prakriti, on the other hand, is not protective, but it is produced. It is always eternal. So it is carried by action but not contemplation. So it gives the ideas developed by the 3 gunas, which are sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, which were in equilibrium prior to the attachment of the Purusha. But once the Purusha is conjuncted with Prakriti, what happens is these gunas loses its equilibrium. So ultimately, they start fighting with each other. At the same time, they are cooperative, and these 3 gunas are also coordinative, and they help the Purusha to get liberated from the attachment of Prakriti to various means and actions. That's a different subject altogether, because it has been explained verily in the teleology also, which I discussed a few months back. And since the evolution theory has produced the Mahat, and through the Mahat, we get the Mano Buddhi Chitta Ahankar, which are responsible for the Pancha Karmendriyas and Pancha Jnanendriyas, which is followed by Pancha Tanmatras, also enveloped by the Pancha Bhutas. So every aspect of these organs have their own intrinsic qualities, which has to be observed. And if you want to get liberated from the sufferings, which Samkhya philosophy calls it as dukkha trayad, which is adhyatmika, adi devika, and adi bhautika. These are the 3 kinds of sufferings which the humanity has to overcome, and this can be overcome only by knowledge according to Kapil Maharishi. But according to Ishvara Krishna, this is entirely different. He is presenting in a different manner, which I will discuss in the 63rd verse, which is really beautiful to understand. And finally, we come to the conclusion: the bondage is only due to Prakriti with Purusha and not Purusha with Prakriti. So the Prakriti is to be liberated from the clutches of Purusha. And let us see how. This is the crux of the subject. In Samkhya Karika 20, Ishvara Krishna discusses about the proximity mixes, the closeness of each other together, and with the qualities. In Samkhya Karika 21, Purusha and Prakriti union has a purpose. This is what he says. What is that purpose? We will see. In SK 44, Samkhya Karika 44, the effects of Dharma, Jnana Bhavas are discussed in detail. There are around 8 bhavas, which I will tell you while discussing about the Samkhya Karika 44. In verse 45, again, the third and fourth bhavas called Vairagya and Aishwarya are discussed beautifully by Ishwara Krishna. In Samkhya Karika 51, it is not just enough if you have the 4 bhavas. If you have the positivity, then naturally you have the negativity also. So the positive has a negative aspect. Dharma means adharma, and then jnana means ajnana, vairagya means abhairagya, and then aishwarya means anaishwarya. These are the 8 bhavas. But this is not just sufficient according to SK 51, which Ishvara Krishna says there are another 5 siddhis. Here I would like to emphasize that these siddhis are entirely different from Patanjali Yoga Sutra's Ashtama Siddhis, wherein Sri Patanjali Maharishi has succinctly explained about the 10 aspects of Samadhi Pada. In that, it comes the Ashtama Siddhis. Once who has overcome that Siddhis, then only that Purusha, the particular person who is meditating, contemplating, and making a dana for the 8th level, and have the quality to enter into the Dharmamega Samadhi. It is called the cloud of virtue. Unless and until you roast all your vasana seeds there, one cannot enter the Dharmamega Samadhi. From the Dharmamega Samadhi, the 34th sloka of chapter 4 of Patanjali Maharishi, which contains 196 slokas, says that then only you can enter the Kaivalya Pada, the Kaivalya Samadhi, the freedom, the liberation, the moksha. On the contrary, Samkhya Karika says it is not so. Here, he says it is the Prakriti to be liberated with the 5 siddhis. Hello? Am I audible, sir? The 5 siddhis, which I will discuss in detail. And Samkhya Karika 62, he says, Prakriti is the one to be liberated and not the Purusha. In SK 63, he says, 7 forms bind the Prakriti. What are those 7 forms? That we will discuss. And the last one releases the Prakriti from the clutches of Purusha. This is what he explains in the bondage in Samkhya Karika. I told you everything in a nutshell, like a synopsis. And now let us move to the subject Samkhya Karika 21. I will read that verse. Tasman tatsam yogad achetanam chetanavat iva lingam guna kartartve epitata karteva bhavati udasinaha. What does it mean? Purusha is by nature is a non-doer. He is capable of only contemplating and not taking action. It does not do any action, but just observes. That doesn't mean it does not observe. It does. It does observe. Still, we sometimes think that this is a virtuous thing that I have done. The I, the me, is playing a great part, thinking that is the Purusha that is guiding and made you to tell through ego that I have done this, I have achieved this, I have written this. So many I's. These are all only infatuation, I would say, as per Sri Ishvara Krishna. I am not telling that, I am only quoting that. We sometimes think like that. The experience of doing something, being conscious of an action. Say that example, you are reading for an examination. Either you have to get a result positively or negatively. That action is generated by buddhi and not by the purusha. This is what he explains. The experience of doing something, being conscious of an action, can only be had by the purusha. Prakriti only does blind action. But going by the tone of these sentences, it looks like Purusha is doing the action, but it is not so. How is it possible Purusha and Prakriti appear to reflect their qualities on each other? It is interchanging. It's just like changing baton in a relay ray, I would say like that. In reality, Purusha has done anything in the sentences, thoughts, as mentioned above. It is the proximity, the closeness of the Purusha with Prakriti, due to which it begins to reflect the qualities of doing action of Prakriti in itself as its own. But it is only Buddhi of Prakriti is doing all those things and not the Purusha. That is what he emphasizes in Samkhya Karika for 21. For example, if you keep a metal object in a red hot flame, what happens? It gets hotness, very hot. You can't even touch it. It is exposed to, for example, to moonlight. Sorry. It cools down, such as the impact of proximity. So, or the company one keeps. A single innocent person in the company of thieves will be considered only as a thief, but not as a wise man. This is the reality. That is what he says. These two come together for a purpose. Similarly, the Purusha is a non-doer, seen as a doer in the company of Prakriti. Supposing a lame person is perched, a Purusha is more or less like a lame person because it is not able to carry out any action. On the contrary, Prakriti is able to do action, but he is a blind person. If the two come together, how will they carry out? So the lame person asks the Prakriti to shoulder him, so that the lame person can see and guide the blind person, which is Prakriti here, and acts accordingly. This is what is happening in our life. Actually, if you think deeply, this is the reality. You never say that I have done it. It is not that you have done it. It is not the Purusha. It is only the Prakriti which creates that kind of ego in our body. And that ego makes you to think, because of the proximity, Purusha thinks that it has done that. This has been clearly explained in Samkhya Karika 21. This means that Prakriti, which is a non-intelligent, non-conscious, and possesses three gunas, appears as intelligent and conscious. It is only misleading, a misnomer, but actually it is not so, which is not in reality. It is like the moon at night actually reflecting the light of sun, which appears to be its own. Similarly, the reflection of a sun in the moving water appears to be shaking, but in the still water, it is very still. In the turbid water, it is totally turbid. But in reality, the sun is itself unaffected by this. It is only the characteristics of the water, movement, still, and turbid, just because it is reflecting through it. Same thing happens in our lives too. We start crying when we see an emotional scene. For example, I would like to quote here about my personal experience with my better half, who happened to see a TV serial every day, night around 7 o'clock. You know how emotionally she is attached to that TV. If there is any current, I will be blamed. And if there's any relay from the vendor due to heavy rains or cloud and thunder, then again I will be blamed. But if the TV does not work, again the blame goes to me. So I will have to take all these precautions to avoid all those things. To care everything is perfect, I will switch on the TV at 6 o'clock and see that everything is perfect and allay her fear, stating that everything is perfect. We can now switch on and see the serial. But once she starts seeing the serial, what happens? It happens almost in all the houses. If it is a tragical series, then at times I even prevented her. She feels like entering into the TV. It is something really emotional. It is born out of ignorance. The ignorance has come through the attachment. So the attachment comes the bondage. Even in reality, it happens like that. So many, not even my better half, but almost the entire world is like that. You are carried away by the illusion, the imagination, or perhaps a kind of perverse thinking. It is not in reality. The director has to produce the scene like that so that you will be able to closely follow it up. And this is what is happening in the case of Prakriti and Purusha. The intermixing of one's own feelings with the unrelated actions of others causes all the sufferings in our lives. This is what mainly he wanted to emphasize. The suffering is created only by our own self and not by the third person. Third person acts as an imitator, but is not really doing so. I have told you the reason for that. And one needs to understand the fact that the scene in the movie has nothing to do with the oneself. It is happening because it was necessary for him to produce that kind of direction. So, because of the intermixing of qualities, which happens due to the coming together of the Purusha and Prakriti, the Purusha is actually a non-doer. It does not possess the instruments, faculties or lingam for doing any action like intentionally like Mahat and Buddhi, the organs of executing action, and the mind appears to be doing the action on its own. The mind, Patanjali says in chapter 1, second verse, Chitta Vriddhi Nirodhaga. Why he emphasizes that? Because he wanted to control the modifications of the mind so that he can perform yoga uninterruptedly and carry out through the Samadhi Pada, through various Kriya Yoga and other things, and through the Samadhi Pada to attain Kaivalya. All actions, happenings around one are just the blind play of conscious less Prakriti. One must always be aware the real nature of consciousness of Purusha and should not get involved in all those actions. This is what he has explained in Samkhya Karika 20. Now moving on to 21, why this Purusha and Prakriti union has a purpose? Krishna says they have a purpose. What is that purpose? Let us see now. Purushasya darshanartham kaivalyartham tata pradhanasya pangva andavad vairopi samyogo statkrita sadgaha. Purushasya of the Purusha. Darshanartham means for the sake of showing. Kaivalyartham means for the purpose of liberation. Tata, thus, therefore. Pradhanasya of Pradhan from the Mula Prakriti. Mahat, Pangva, the lame person which is Purusha. Andavad, a blind person which is Prakriti. Api even also. Samyoga of coming together. Tatkritha, from this act of union, conjunction, Purusha and Prakriti come together for a purpose. This is what he says in 21. According to Samkhya, this universe is the result of conjunction of the two independent entities, Purusha and Prakriti. Each has its own role, but is deficient without the other. I cannot live without my wife, and my wife cannot live without my presence. This is what the bandha we have developed in our day-to-day life. It is not only with me, but all the grahasthas. We can just compare that. Like the example of a lame man and a blind man. If I am lame, I will ask my better half to guide me. Then, if she is not, then I will be guiding her. This is the interactive, roles played by Prakriti and Purusha, who get isolated from their group in a forest and wander about haphazardly. In course of time, they encountered each other. The blind man mounted the lame man on his shoulder. Thus, the blind man was able to walk on the path as guided by the lame man. This union of theirs served the purpose of walking and seeing. Similarly, the spirit, like the lame man, has the power of contemplation but not action. Prakriti, like the blind man, has the power of action but not contemplation. Moreover, it is this union which causes or brings about the creation and loss till their mutual objectives are achieved. What is the mutual objectives? It to get liberated. Whether it is Purusha or Prakriti, the ultimate aim is to get liberated. And once it is liberated, then again another chapter will begin with another jiva, and again the Prakriti will play the same role. So the thing goes like that. With the union of the two, things happen, but we are unable to understand all the situations and get disturbed, get worried, and get dejected. Only a few wise persons understand that. Who is the wise person who has the 8 bhavas, who has the 5 siddhis, who has the discriminative quality, as Adi Shankaracharya has told, I think in Atma Bodha or something like that. Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha. Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha. You should understand which is real and which is not real. If you are able to categorize, if you are able to differentiate, then there is no problem. That is what Ishvara Krishna also emphasizes. The wise man gets the clarity and he is, keeping away from the unwise persons. In Bhajagovindam also there is a song like that. Satsangatya nisangatvam, nisangatvam se nischalatatvam, nirmohatvam, nirmohatvam se nischalatatvam, nischalatatvam se jivan mukti. That is what she says in Bhajagovindam. So like that, if you are able to categorize satsang versus durjana sang, that easily overcome all these problems of adharma, ajnana, vairagya, and anaishwarya, and the 7 forms of the bhavas of the mind. This is what Ishvara Krishna also emphasizes in sloka 21. After listening to the explanation presented by the above average human who is endowed with an iota of intelligence, it is just enough if you have an iota of intelligence, and would be prouded to think that if the ultimate aim of coming together is of the Purusha and Prakriti is to separate them from each other, then why do they come together? That is, in the first place, is being asked. Ishvara Krishna, author of Samkhya philosophy, Samkhya Karika, does not answer this question. The philosopher merely states that they come together. There's a kind of gas disturbance in my stomach, so I'm unable to continue. My steam, and kindly excuse me for that. No explanations are given, thereby not entering into unanswerable controversy. The author wants to concern ourselves with the practical implications of the policy philosophy without venturing into the possible infinite regress, because it is a never-ending argument, never-ending logic, never-ending problem, argument and counter-argument, as the Iktidipika does the same with the Buddhists, the Tibetan Buddhists about the teleology. Like that, it keeps on going. So it is better to avoid why they have come together. The question is avoided in, say, Ishvara Krishna's Samkhya Karika. Though one can assume so many reasons from the author's perspective of not clarifying this very obvious interrogation, one can, lean towards. Some questions may remain unanswered as looking for the answers can lead to unending arguments. Another of the missing explanation could be that being finite things lack the capacity. I don't have the 100% intelligence. I may be wrong somewhere, or the rationality to answer all the questions that arise in our minds. It is not possible to solve all the questions. Supposing a teacher argues or explains a portion in his classroom, and so many students are, observing him and asking so many questions, pertinent as well as impertinent questions. So he cannot keep on answering everything. He will try to, convince them in such a way that they are satisfied with the kind of explanation that he is providing in the classroom. This is what is happening in our real life too. The practical benefit of this karika would be understanding the fact that difficult situations do come in life. Experiments presented by Prakriti, but they present themselves to enable us to do our rightful duty. There are problems. Every day we have problems, and we must analyze, we must examine, we must interpret, and we must avoid what is bad and take only the good, like the swan is able to, take the milk only from the water. So like that, if we do it, then there is a purpose. The purpose is served in this karika. This is what is applied this in our life, and we have to understand that. So this is how he has completed in 20 and 21. Now we are moving on to 44th karika, the effects of dharma and jnana bhavas, which are very vital and at the same time very easy also. But looks very easy. Unfortunately, to maintain dharma is very, very difficult. Dharmo rakshati rakshadada. That is what he says. If you maintain dharma, if you protect dharma, dharma will protect you. But that does not happen always. We miss the link. We fail to maintain the dharma. Sometimes we are rather not caring much for the dharma, and we keep on prodding on that. So the karika is dharmena gamanam urdhva gamanam asthad bhavatya adharmena jnanena cha apavargo viparyad ishyate bandha. Dharmena, through dharma, gamanam is going, urdhva means upwards, gamanam asthad, going downwards. Now you will be able to understand what is upwards and downwards. Upwards is going towards the heaven, and the downwards is going towards the patala loka. That is what he is indirectly meaning into that. Bhavatya happens. Adharmena, via adharma. Jnanena, through jnana. Cha, and apavargo, emancipation, progress in transcendence. Viparyayat, from the opposites. Ishyate, considered. Bandha is the bondage. Samkhya Karika 44 further throws some light on the two bhavas, the dharma and jnana. Here it is discusses the consequences for the individual of cultivating the positive habits, positive bhavas, of dharma and jnana within the buddhi. Buddhi is responsible for all these things, not the purusha. Once again, I emphasize that is only buddhi is responsible for all the, our sufferings in this case. It also explains the repercussions of adhering the two negative counterparts, adharma and ajnana. Wherever the dharma goes, the shade follows adharma. Wherever the jnana goes, the shade follows the ajnana. Normally, the two negative counterparts are not separate category of bhavas. Those are present by default in the absence of corresponding positive versions of the same. The person who does not cultivate dharma slips into adharma on its own. On his own, he slips into adharma. The same goes true for jnana as well. The karika clearly explains how bhavas can be a vehicle for progressing on the path of enlightenment or an obstacle for the same. Because going upwards is very, very difficult, but going downwards is all the more easier, because if you are not keeping dharma and if you are not keeping jnana. This is what he emphasizes in the Samkhya Karika 44. And the effects each action when backed by dharma, dharma bhava, is bound to bestow one with the self-growth in the realms of the material as well as the spiritual world. Dharma bhava infuses discriminative efficiency, accompanied by self-direction, self-propelling. The action here is done with a clear consciousness of the duty. Such an action will be fueled with the righteous conduct, right knowledge, right ethics. All those things are briefly explained by Sri Lord Buddha in his eightfold path in Buddhism. So all here, if you have the same righteous conduct and equipoise, the equanimity, the fraternity, the maitri, the friendliness, all those things will lead you to dharma approach or path, dharma path. Chances of failure related to whatever one is set to achieve diminish completely if you follow the dharma of our life as prescribed by the scriptures. We are definitely going towards the upward journey of heaven. This we'll have to bear it in mind. Sorry. One who is endowed with dharma will not falter on one's course due to emotional upheavals with a desire. Material gains come to the one who has deleted the desire to possess them. With a clear vision and understanding, one treads the path of spirituality. Dharma bhava helps by maintaining the clarity and purpose of the journey, or the purpose of one's journey, the purpose of life in this mundane world, where it is haunted by so many illegal things, so many adharmic things, so many bad things are happening every day. So we are not able to overcome all those things unless and until we develop that dharma bhava. It is highly impossible to proceed further on this. It will be an impediment instead of going forward. So better be reminded by the words, dharmo rakshati rakshataha. You protect dharma, dharma will protect you at the end. The adharma bhava, one moves away from one's duty. My duty, I have to do this, but I don't do that. I'm a drunkard. I'm a thief. I'm a murderer. I'm a rapist. I kill everybody. I enter in terrorism. I loot the banks and so many other inexplainable words, which I don't want to delve into that. These are all adharmic bhavas. If you develop that, then you are very sure that you cannot move upwards. It is only the Padala Loga which is reserved. And there is a lot of problems. And we have to read a lot in this Garuda Purana as well. Adharma bhava shackles one with the vices of anger, jealousy, hatred, enmity, lying to other, and restricting one's progress in the path of spirituality. You can never enter if you develop all these bhavas. Such a person lacks restricting one's progress on the path of spirituality. Such a person lacks persistence, commitment to the right cause and path. And let us move on to in but Bhagavad Gita also, Sri Lord Krishna says, Jnana yogena samkhyanam, karma yogena yoginam. That is what he emphasizes about the karma yogi and jnana yogi in chapter 3, verse 3. And moving on to, I think we have, I have another 5 to 10 minutes, sir. With your permission, can I proceed, sir? 5 to 10 minutes. Please give me 10 minutes. I'll finish it off. Okay. In Samkhya Karika 45, Vairagya and Aishwarya Bhava remove cause and obstacles. Vairagyat prakriti laya samsaro bhavati rajasat ragat aishwaryat abhigata viparyayat tad viparyasaha. So in this he says, practicing Vairagya Bhava dissolves the cause of creation. If you have the Vairagya, Viveka, Vairagya is not just like that. You should have Viveka Vairagya. Viveka Vairagya. To understand the difference between Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. That is what Sri Adi Shankara also quotes in his Atma Buddha award. So, towards their objects and evolutes of matter. There are a lot of examples. I can keep on going on this Vairagya Bhava towards material desires for Purusha to be freed from the chains of Prakriti and reverse the entire process of evolution of the universe. This also means destroying the cause, desire to exist on the evolution of Prakriti into the material universe. Vairagya also means that Purusha has been shown enough experiences by Prakriti. Prakriti is dictating terms. He's even educating the Purusha. Don't do that. Don't go in the adharmic way. Don't go in the jnana, path. Have this vairagyam, viveka vairagyam. Then you will get the relief. Otherwise, not. This is what he explains in this Karika. And moving on to there are a lot of other examples which I just wanted to, explain, but paucity of time makes me to think a little shorten, and then I will switch on to the other verse in 41, which is very important about the five siddhis, where Ishvara Krishna discusses about this, all those things in detail. What are those five siddhis? Attaining success. Samkhya Karika 51 talks about the five additional powers the intellect can express itself into. These five are additional to the 8 powers of Dharma, Dharma, Jnana, Jnana, Vairagya, Vairagya, Aishwarya, and Aishwarya. In spite of that, additional to the 8 powers, which have been described in an earlier Karika, as explained in earlier Siddhis, are one of the main 4 dimensions in which Buddhi can express itself. These dimensions can be aid or an obstacle in the path of realizing the ultimate goal of spirituality, experiencing the super consciousness of the Purusha. The 8 siddhis mentioned earlier can be impediments on the path of realizing the ultimate goal of life, which is liberation. The 5 siddhis explained here are the ones which can help the practitioner overcome the threefold pain, as I earlier said about the Devika, Adi Bautika, Adhyatmika, with the human existence. And prior to the dimension of siddhis, a 4th dimension, these 3 dimensions are Viparyaya, Ashakti, and Tushti. That is wrong knowledge, powerless incapacity. Tushti is contentment, and Siddhi is success. The 5 siddhis are Vaha, reasoning, or truth, Sabda Parimanam, words of a particular kind. If you happen to hear the Vedas, you get that beautiful tranquility of mind. Adhyayana, study, practicing the scriptures. And Shukrut Prapti. Shukrut Prapti is attaining best friends. In the company of good friends only, we can satsangattena sangatvam. Remember that word, Vachagovindam. Company of attaining good friends to elevate ourselves. And dana is charity. We have to give in charity so that if we attain this, 5 siddhis, you are liberated. And in the 62 sloka, I'm not going deep into that, the right methodology of Adhyayana and all those things in detail because of the paucity of time. Sukhirit Prapti, good and like-minded company is also necessary. And in the 62 sloka, Tasmana Bhadyate Sauna Muchyate Napi Samsaradi Kachit Samsaradi Bhadyate Muchyate Cha Nanashraya Prakirtihi. Tasmana, therefore, not Bhadyate, bound. Sauna, not any. Muchyate is liberated. Samsaradi means transmigrates. Kaschit means the Purusha. Samsaradi Purusha transmigrates, Badhade is bound, Muchade is liberated, Cha and Nanashraya, the support of several creations. Prakriti is Prakriti. A race it carries forward the nature and various characteristics of Prakriti from the previous Karikas. In explaining the character of the Prakriti, for the first time the author turns the tables on the understanding. One was being hitherto the relationship between Prakriti and Purusha consciousness. Until now, it was being stated that it is the Purusha which is held bound by Prakriti, which is not also responsible for helping it unshackle itself from the Prakriti grip. Here it is stated that it is not the Purusha which is bound in the real sense, it is the Prakriti which is bound by the promise of freeing the Purusha from its bindings. Samkhya Karika 62 is the Prakriti is bound and is liberated. Underline the word in Samkhya Karika 42. The Purusha is bounded by Prakriti. The Prakriti is bounded by Purusha, and Prakriti is bound and is at last liberated from the clutches of Purusha. It is Prakriti being the support of manifold creation, then transmigrates, is bound and is released. It is just like a mother, a pregnant lady giving birth to a baby. There is a slogan also in that. I can explain all those things in detail. For paucity of time, I'm not pushing all those things. And moving on to this last slogan, the Sankhya Karika 63, the 7 forms bind Prakriti. The only one that releases it. In the Sankhya Karika text, Rupai Sabdabir Ivatu Bhadratya Atmanam Atmana Prakritihi Saivacha Purushartam Prati Vimochadyate Ekaropena. That is the only one that saves ultimately. What are those 7 forms? As I discussed about the 8 bhavas, the 7 bhavas are Dharma, Dharma, Jnana, Jnana, Vairagya, Vairagya, and Jnana and Ajnana. And the last one is Vairagya, Ivaragya, Aishwarya, Anaishwarya, and Jnana, Ajnana. So he is discussing about the Jnana, which is releasing the Prakriti from the clutches of the Purusha. In this 63 sloka, which is very important, helps to understand how Prakriti gets bound in the previous Karika. We have seen that it actually Prakriti that is bound and not the Purusha is generally inferred. There is a clear reason because of which Prakriti gets bound or entangled in its matrix of activities. Here, it is bounded by 7 and released by only 1, that is Jnana. This is what in all these slokas, Sankhya Karika, Sri Ishwara Krishna has discussed. Though I have shortened some of the slokas, the bondage in Sankhya philosophy very well, and it is better. I would request all the intellectuals to give more interpretations, comments on this. And I thank you very much for the philosophy family, for the administrator, Professor Dr. Pramod Kumar Das, and Mr. Dr. Rana and Dr. Om Narayan Rao, and also the other intellectual members, professors, scholars, students, for having given me an opportunity to share some of the views that I have studied, and I would like to, I share with you all, and I thank you very much. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your beautiful and wonderful presentation on the topic bondage in Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya Karika. Yes, we shall have discussion with our philosopher friends present here. Dr. Maharana, are you here? Dr. Maharana? Okay. First, I shall have my observation. Then I shall invite others to have their observations, and we shall proceed. Whenever we are discussing about bondage, am I audible, sir? Okay. when we are discussing about bondage, am I clearly audible? Shravani?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Channama, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay. When we are discussing about bondage in any philosophical system, not only in Samkhya, any philosophical system, first of all the question comes, who is in bondage? Who? Is it an animal? Is it a human being? Is it God? Is it Purusha? Is it Prakriti? Who? This is the question. This question is not answered in many philosophical systems perfectly, neither in Sankhya nor in Buddhism. It is not so perfectly discussed. Contradictions take place. We deny that there is no permanent entity, there is no soul in Buddhism, there is no Atma, and still at the same time we discuss that there is Nirvana. One needs liberation. Similarly, in a Sankhya system, we discuss that Prakriti is in bondage. Is it viable to say that Prakriti is in bondage? Prakriti is a man, is a person. How can Prakriti be in bondage? When we utter this sentence, it does not sound philosophical. It appears to be an assumption. Maybe the philosophers are great philosophers, they are great seers, but their standpoints, their views are only perspective. They speak from their own perspectives. Again, you said that Prakriti should be free from Purusha. Prakriti should be free from Purusha. If Prakriti is not free from Purusha, then only we define that Purusha, Prakriti is in bondage. It is not also clear, and it is also not true. Why I am explaining? We are just discussing. I agree with you because you don't have any fault, because you are just advocating the philosophy of Isar Krishna's interpretation on Sankhya Karika. Therefore, there is discussion in philosophy. Therefore, we discuss. Therefore, there is critical assessment, critical discussion. The question is whether Purusha Prakriti are same or different. Purusha and Prakriti are same or different. Brahman and Jagat are same or different. Jiva and Paramatma, Jiva Brahmaiva na Paraha, whether they are different or they are same. This is the fundamental question. Advaita Vedanta says that they are same. They are same for a man of wisdom, for a Brahmagyani, whose mind is Sthita Prajna. In Bhagavad Gita also it is said. For them there is no Maya, there is no difference between Brahman and Jagat, because they understand their perspective reality. From this perspective, Jagat is said to be Mithya. From another perspective, Jagat is said to be real. So Brahman and Jagat are the same thing. There cannot be a second entity. If there would be a second entity, it cannot be Advaita. So the concept Maya is there only for the ignorant people who does not understand the reality. For the knowledge of wisdom, for the man of wisdom, there is no Maya. In Sankhya system, the opposite is said. There it is said, so in Vedanta it is said, the knowledge of the identity is the highest knowledge. That Jiva Brahmeva Na Paraha, you should know this. Na Paraha means they are identical, they are same. But in Samkhya system it is said, you should know that they are different. Purusha and Prakriti are different from each other. This is the difference between dualism and monism. But the question is, when we are discussing about bondage, who is in bondage? Who seeks liberation? For whom there is a discussion of ethics? For whom? For whom there are eightfold paths? For whom there are triratnas? For whom there are ethical disciplines? For whom there is yoga? Who is that agent? Who is that client? The answer is, that is the ahankara, that is the jiva, that is the individual who is subject to bondage and who needs liberation. This is the common thing that is available in Samkhya and that is also available in Advaita Vedanta. If we take the common point between Samkhya and Advaita Vedanta, this is the common point. That it is the individual, it is the ego, it is our ahankara which puts us in false knowledge, false attachment with the falsity. We mistake the falsity as the reality. We mistake the appearance as the truth. We mistake the manifestation as the unmanifest. So I fail to understand how Prakriti is in bondage. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, the greatest ignorance of a human being is that he does not know that all my activities are due to my Prakriti, therefore I am not the agent. If I think that I am the agent, that is the greatest form of my ignorance. Karta bhava. Yes, I am the doer, I am doing this, I am the agent. I should at least claim that I am the instrument only. This is called Vairagya Bhava. Vairagya Bhava means I should disclaim my agency. That I don't have any attachment with my agency. I don't have any attachment with this manifested world, this changing world. If everything is changing, I should accept that change. So this is my observation. I want to get clarification from Dr. Srinivasan ji. How could you say that? How could Ishwar Krishna say that Prakriti is in bondage? And Prakriti's bondage is due to its proximity with Purusha. Number one. Number two, do you know that you are in bondage or not? That is another question. An animal is in bondage, but the animal does not know that it is in bondage. If you are a human being, if you know that you are in bondage, then only there is the possibility of liberation. If you do not know, if you do not have that understanding of bondage, that I am in bondage, then there is no chance of getting liberation. So Purusha is necessary, consciousness is necessary to have liberation. Without that consciousness, a man who is in bondage will remain in bondage forever because he has no consciousness. So Prakriti is unconscious. So an unconscious Prakriti can, if Prakriti is in bondage, suppose we accept this premise, Prakriti is in bondage, then from that it follows, what is the nature of Prakriti? Prakriti is unconscious. If Prakriti remains unconscious, then Prakriti will remain in bondage forever, if at all it will not come in contact with the consciousness. This is the common sense. So if I am in bondage, then I need knowledge to be liberated. Without knowledge, I shall still remain blind and lame both, because I don't have any knowledge about my bondage. The man who does not know that he is in bondage, suppose in the initial stage he may not know, but after proper counseling, Arjuna was also reluctant to fight because Arjuna was in bondage. Arjuna was in different type of confusion. But after proper counseling, Arjuna came to know that yes, this is my duty to fight. This is for Lokasangraha. Then he came to the right track. So initially we are in bondage, but after having knowledge, after getting enlightenment, after getting proper counseling, we came to know that, oh, I am in bondage. The moment you know that you are in bondage, you are not in bondage. So it is knowledge that liberates you. Sir, please have your observation. If you do not agree, please have your explanation. Then we shall go to others for having their observation. Unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you very much for your lengthy observations, coupled with some questions. I would like to say that initially, when I started, I said the Samkhya Karika does not discuss about why they have come together, the Purusha and Prakriti. And let us not discuss about those things. That's what he clearly mentions. It is not very easy to, clarify, because finite things always doesn't have 100% perfection and intelligence. And secondly, you said to whom this is intended for. This bondage, is it for Prakriti or for Purusha or for God or for Buddhi, and so many other things you mentioned. I have very clearly mentioned that this is intended in Sankhya Karika. The bondage is only with reference to Prakriti and not Purusha, because I clarified it very clearly about the difference between the consciousness and unconsciousness Prakriti, the lame man and the blind man, the qualities and the which the Purusha is able to observe and contemplate, which Prakriti cannot. He can only carry out as a doer, can carry out action. But it has the evolvent as well as the evolutes, but not the Purusha. Purusha has the consciousness. Prakriti is unconscious. It doesn't have consciousness. So it is active when the Purusha is in conjunction with Prakriti. It starts developing with the help of three gunas, and all this Mahat, Mano, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, Tanmatra, and Pancha Bhudas are developed, and not with Purusha. So they are able to understand, as you rightly said, about talking about the Buddhi, the knowledge, which has 8 bhavas: Dharma, Dharma, Vairagya, Vairagya, Aishwarya, Aishwarya, and Jnana, Jnana. And finally, in 63 chapter sloka, see, Ishvara Krishna discusses about the bondage is really between the Prakriti and the Purusha, how the Purusha is released from the bondage, which I have explained. For information, I will read the sloka once again. Rupaiha sabdabir eva tu vadhnatya atmanam atmana prakritihi saivaccha purushartham prati vimochyat ekarupena. The Prakriti, which is not having consciousness, but it has the intelligence. It has 8 bhavas. The Buddhi has 8 bhavas. All the 7 are eliminated, which I have discussed earlier. Only one is left. That is Jnana. That is what you also said. I confer with you. What you said is right. The knowledge, the wisdom that enables the Buddhi to understand that it is under the clutches of Purusha, and Purusha has to be liberated, and ultimately the three gunas which promote the release of Purusha from Prakriti. This is what my observation of ended of the Buddhi in 7 forms. There are about 84 lakh yonis. This is intended only for those human beings with the 6 senses. They only can understand about the Brahma Satyam or Jagan Mithya or Maya, the Advaita philosophy, or Samkhya philosophy, or Nyaya philosophy, or Samkhya Karika philosophy, etc., etc. Is intended only for the human society, not for anybody else. Which I would like to, make it clarified that it is right from the beginning. I was telling that the human society is liable for 3 kinds of sufferings: Adhyatmika, Adi Devika, Adi Bhautika. How to eliminate that is the duty of the individual persons through dharma bhavas and by siddhis, which I discussed in detail about them. And then here the Sankhya Karika is the nature of buddhi is defined by any of the 8 bhavas, 4 positive and 4 negative. It can remain infused with at any given time. I can be adharmic. I need not follow the steps of jnana. I can go into the durjana sangha. So these are the things left for the identification or the clarity which gives the buddhi, the mind, so that the mind is keeping away from that and trying to get liberated, as well as for the Purusha to be emancipated. This is my, humble answer for your this thing. And there is no question of reading about the Advaita philosophy and comparing with the Samkhya philosophy and Nyaya philosophy here. It was fully focusing only on Sankhya Karika, and Sankhya Karika establishes that Prakriti is at last bound by the Purusha, and the Prakriti is liberated only because of that. And this is my humble, reply to you, sir, to your kind services. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir. The very common sense question is.
Sir, your voice is very low.
Yes. Now it is clear.
Yes.
Yes. The point is, Prakriti and Purusha, they stand parallel to each other because Prakriti is unconscious and Purusha is conscious. In that way, they are different. The point is, who is the third person? Who is the third person who knows both Prakriti and Purusha? For example, you are the third person. You are Dr. Srinivasan ji. You know your Prakriti very well. Your Prakriti, your Gunas very well.
Yeah.
And you also aware of those Prakriti. You are aware of your self-consciousness. That yes, I am self-conscious. So you are the mediator between your Prakriti. That means which is changing, which is dynamic, which is forcing you for different activities. This is one aspect of your life, and the other aspect is you are very calm, you are very peaceful, you have a very understanding mind. That is also, that possibility also you realize. So you are the third person who knows both your Prakriti and Purusha. So that third person is in bondage, and that third person needs to be liberated gradually by the knowledge of the difference according to Samkhya, by the knowledge of the identity according to Vedanta. But this third person is not discussed, is not properly discussed in many philosophical systems, not only in Samkhya. Just we are reading slokas and translating its meanings. But the point is, who is that third person? This is also not discussed in Buddhism. My point is there. So, okay, this remains as a question forever because philosophy has no end. So now I shall invite others to have their observation. Anybody else, please have their observations. Then after all, we shall discuss.
Someone has, Sri Srabani Mishra has asked a question. Sir, when Prakriti transformed, become Purusha, it will not be in bondage. Is it so, sir? See, it's rather a very difficult question, because no, Prakriti is Prakriti and Purusha is Purusha. Prakriti is not conscious, it doesn't have consciousness, and it has only the evolution and the evolvence like the Buddhi, Manobuddhi, Ahankar, and the Chitta. Whereas the Purusha is the difference between the Purusha and Prakriti is neither productive nor produce, and it has no evolvence or evolves, no gunas, no, it is finite thing, though Prakriti is also finite thing. It is only a Nartaki, a female character, attracts of a male character, and that is why the bondage has come. And it will not happen when the Purusha is transformed to Prakriti and Prakriti is transformed to bondage. It's a nice question, but it's a very debatable one, but it cannot be answered so easily. Thank you.
Hello, Pramod sir. Actually, I listened your stand on the Purusha and Prakriti and the third person paradigm. Okay, please let me clarify. What is that third person which is in bondage and which has not been discussed in many philosophical systems, as you have said? It is to you, sir, Pramod sir.
Because we are discussing that Prakriti is in bondage. Prakriti is in bondage. Prakriti needs to be liberated because Prakriti is only the three gunas. Now there must be a witness of these three gunas, or that must be a third person who undergoes these three gunas. So my point is the individual ego, the individual person, the individual who is conscious of these three gunas and at the same time of the transcendence of the gunas. That means um, beyond the gunas. That means the Purusha Bhava. That means the pure consciousness. That is the individual who is in bondage and who seeks liberation. Gradually, gradually that individual person gets transformation by education, by proper counseling, and that is the best example in Bhagavad Gita. The state of a mind of Arjuna in the initial stage of war, it became different afterwards because of the proper counseling of Lord Krishna. So Arjuna is that third person who is a common individual who suffers from different types of attachments, being indulged in this material world. And there is another possibility that one should have a mind of equanimity, sthita prajna, buddhi, mana, like Lord Krishna, who is free from all such attachments. So between bondage and liberation, there is the client is the individual, the client is the jiva, the client is the ignorant ignorant person who needs to be liberated. Otherwise, the man of wisdom has all Siddha Purushas, they are ever liberated. Therefore, we say that Purusha is ever liberated. So it is only so the instrument is knowledge. I am saying the instrument is knowledge. That knowledge can make us liberate. If we say that Prakriti should be free from Purusha, and that is the definition of liberation, Purusha is defined as consciousness, Prakriti is unconscious. If how can something unconscious will become liberation without being attached with consciousness? That is the fundamental question in Samkhya system. And this is a problem in dualistic system. Not only in Samkhya, in all dualistic philosophy, this problem remains as a problem. Because they try to prove their separate identity, that Purusha is Purusha and the Prakriti is Prakriti. And at the same time, they claim that Prakriti needs to be liberated. And that liberation is possible when Prakriti will be free from Purusha. Purusha means consciousness. So how is it possible? This is my question. Not to Professor Srinivasan ji. This is a question to all. Thank you.
Perception, sir, I would like to add a few more things. That the third person is very well answered in Jagrada, Swapna, and Sushupti. In the Swapna, you become a third person. When the dream is gone, you go into the deep sleep state. And the next morning, when you are waking up, everything is real. So there is no question of third person on that. It is my perception, and it is verily explained there in that sutra.
Maharana, so there are no other questions. So you give your observation and give vote of thanks.
Hello. Should I go for vote of thanks? Hello. 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 Yes. Yes. Okay. Let me allow for proposing vote of thanks. Okay. So for a long time we were listening the talk of Professor Srinivasan, and today the observation and comment given by Professor Pramod Kumar Das has also very benefiting for all of us. And we know that Professor Srinivasan is an exponent in the philosophy of Samkhya, the philosophy of the yoga, and he has given his Lord in the talk on different occasions that we have been benefited. And I don't want to have any comment on the talk of Professor Srinivasan, because we know his stand that is the philosophy of Sankhya and Vedanta and Yoga also. And when I listen the talk and observation of Professor Pramod Padas, I feel that Professor Pramod Padas has a very particular stand on the philosophy, on the dualistic philosophy of Sankhya, because he finds some basic problems in the dualistic problems when they try to have the separate identity in two realities. And for him, Purusha and Prakriti are very parallel to each other. And for him, there is a third person who is in bondage, and in many philosophical problem, in many philosophical system, it has not been found out, and nobody has tried to find out it. And Professor Pramod Padas, in his observation, said that individual ego is conscious of, uh, of the three gunas, and he can also overcome it. So for him, the individual ego is the bar, is the obstacle, and individual ego is also a helper. And for him, it is the knowledge which can make us liberated, and many things that Professor Pramod Kumar has added to the talk of Professor Srinivasan, because whenever Professor Pramod Kumar Das gives his observation, particularly on the philosophy of Sankhya, he has innovative. He has a new way of looking at the reality, looking at the problem. So today we have been benefited a lot by the talk of Professor Srinivasan. I extend my uh, not thanks, I extend my gratitude to the senior professor, Professor Srinivasan, and we always have been benefited by his observation on different webinars, and he has a keen interest to listen the talks and to put his observation, and that gives us very pleasure for all the listeners. And today, Pramod Padas has given his valuable observation, and which paves away many problems, and which gives a new way of looking at the thing, a new way of looking at the dualistic philosophical approach in Indian philosophy. So I appreciate both the speaker um, and the observation made by Professor Pramod Das. And I also offer my gratitude to Madam Sravani Misra, who has put her observation on the chat box. So today it is a very beautiful webinar, and we all have been benefited out of it. So I propose my vote of thanks to all the listeners, those have been present now, and those have given their valuable times to listen and to have some knowledge, have some wisdom from this webinar. And over to Pramod Madas to wind up the session.
Before that, I would like to interfere that some of my